low dopamine version of Sisyphus. If you understand cookies, you can then understand the basics of how your information is delivered. How many times when you're playing an online game or going on some new website, have you gotten a pop-up asking if you want to enable cookies? The way cookies work is like this. When you go to a website for the first time, what is actually happening is your browser, Google, Safari, whatever, is making a request to the website's server to generate multiple things: images, scripts, advertisements, etc. If cookies are enabled for that site, when your browser makes that request, the server of the website responds with a small piece of text called a set cookie, which your browser saves, stores, and sends back on your next request, the next time you visit that website. So the next time I go back to Sugar, Cool Math Games knows which user I am, and knows that I've already beaten the first 10 levels. This is why you stay logged in on certain sites even if you close the tab, why your progress saves, why the items stay in your Amazon shopping cart. In the early internet, this was the primary way that your information was tracked. It remained within the site, and tracked your action only on that site. Of course, there are problems that exist with this model, but it was mostly localized, and little could be done with your cookie on most sites. However, as the internet became increasingly monetized, and the advertising market became the primary tool that most sites used for funding, third-party cookies were introduced as the new model of data collection. Remember how I said that when you visit a website, your browser makes a series of requests, and the website makes a request back that the next time you visit, the browser identifies you with a cookie? In the advertising age of the internet, the same thing happened. Except when you logged onto a site, your browser was making a request to the ad network being displayed on your screen, which also requested a cookie. Major ad networks like Google Ads and Facebook advertising ran advertising slots across the web. So as soon as your identifier was sent to the ad network, they knew who you were almost anywhere you went. And not just that you were the same individual, but what pages you visited, at what time, in what order. Each of these puzzle pieces, useless on their own. But through countless hours and days and years browsing the internet, they added up into complex profiles of an individual. This is how you got all those news stories in the 2010s. Target finding out women were pregnant before they even knew. Being sold the same products, fed the same topics across sites. These phenomena led many people to believe the surveillance was more direct, that Siri was listening to them, that their webcam was watching them. And this may be true. Apple has settled multi-million-dollar cases on those allegations. But the fact is, the data was there. We just didn't realize we were giving it away. The limits on what major ad networks could learn from you quickly eroded, as it became just more and more financially advantageous to concentrate your data. A third-party cookie on a website is just that. It can track what page you're on and when, which is still an enormous amount of information. But it's not detailed. It's not whether or not you bought the product, liked the video, what you commented, etc. But as sites like Google began offering marketing toolkits, analytics services, and more to the sites that hosted their ads, sites began tracking this information in exchange for detailed guidance on how to better market to you.
Many of the companies that benefit most from data tracking have compelling ways to entice web developers, app creators, and store managers to install their tracking technology. Companies with monopolies or near monopolies can use their market power to build tracking networks, monitor and inhibit smaller competitors, and exploit consumer privacy for their own economic advantage. First, dominant companies like Google and Facebook can pressure publishers into installing their tracking code. Publishers rely on the world's biggest social network and the world's biggest search engine to drive traffic to their own sites.
What this market of third-party cookies also did was create an underworld data industry like nothing we've ever seen before. Here's how it works. When your identification is sent to the ad network, a process called real-time bidding takes place, and it occurs in less than a second. First, your data flows from your browser to an ad exchange via a website, usually in the form of a cookie. Then, the exchange sends out a bid request to advertisers. This includes information about you, your device, location, and sometimes inferred interest based on past behavior. Before this moment, advertisers have already cookie synced with the exchange. Cookie syncing is a process where different companies match their separate IDs for you, so they can recognize you across sites. This allows advertisers to connect this bid request to a broader profile of your activity across the web. Sometimes they also use data brokers to expand that profile further. Once advertisers recognize who they're bidding on, they decide how much your attention is worth to them, based on how likely you are to click, engage, or buy. An auction then takes place in milliseconds, and the highest bidder wins the right to show you an ad. All the companies involved in these auctions, including the losers, receive your information from the ad exchange. Some advertisers place intentionally losing bids in order to stockpile profiles. Once the ad is placed, the website sends feedback to the advertiser on how the user interacted with the ad. In short, the advertisers, ad exchanges, and websites are all collecting more and more information about you and shooting it back and forth between each other because it's so financially advantageous to do so. And then you get stuff like this.
As people engage with your brand, they represent themselves differently. The challenge for marketers is recognizing people at every touch point. That's why there's full contacts resolve, allowing you to connect, consolidate, enrich, and amplify your customer and prospect identities so you can truly know your customers and engage them in the moments that matter.
The term used there, identity resolution, is a euphemism in the data broker industry for piecing all of your various cookies and internet actions together into one individual profile. I downloaded the identity resolution guide from Full Contact, the site that put out that video.
Using your databases of customer information, fragmented and siloed inputs are mapped to individuals. Each matched record is tied to a persistent identifier at the person level. Use that persistent person ID to merge or deduplicate your datasets, connect datasets across your enterprise, message consistently, and query Full Contact for additional information about that person. Or you can use the person ID as an anonymous ID in the AdTech MarTech ecosystem for measurement and optimization.
This stuff is all wrapped in these euphemisms and buzzwords that sound like docile marketing slop at first. But what it really is just public acknowledgement of what's happening. Fragmented and siloed inputs are mapped to individuals, means we are mining and buying every input from individuals we can get our hands on to find out who they are and market harder. Back in 2013, the United States Senate held a hearing on the rising issue of data brokers. In the report, they found that datasets included marketing kits for profiles like rural and barely making it, and ethnic second city strugglers. But of course, the industry has advanced since then. Major data brokers like Oracle and Acxiom rake in billions annually, offering brokerage services, usually centered around identity resolution. They compile data and profiles from different advertisers, websites, apps, and try to match the data into composites of individuals to sell back to institutions and corporations. Acxiom uses the Abilitex system, which houses over 700 million profiles, each stored with a unique ID. Oracle aggregates 3 billion user profiles from over 15 million websites and 1 billion mobile users. As we entered the back half of the 2010s, the industry was booming, more data being collected, more stored. A report by Joseph Cox found that Yodlee, one of the largest data brokerages in the world at the time, was performing data clean aggregation services that identified individuals by tracking their credit card purchases across locations and selling the cleaned profiles back to institutions.
If an attacker can get hold of the spatiotemporal coordinates for just 3 to 4 randomly picked transactions in the dataset, then the attacker can unmask the person with a very high probability. With this unmasking, the attacker would have access to all the other transactions made by that individual.
The same tracking that occurred on the internet was playing out on mobile apps through advertising IDs attached to phones. The concerns building were not only in data collection, but how it could be used in malicious ways like this. Pre-spying Grindr data from brokerages, Cambridge Analytica harvesting Facebook data, the discoveries of Snowden. The public was becoming increasingly more aware of how data was being collected on bulk and used for surveillance and nefarious purposes, beyond just marketing. But what were we going to do? The whole industry was simply too profitable to just flip it off. And then suddenly, in the aftermath of the Cambridge Analytica scandal, actual reforms took place. The EU instituted the General Data Protection Regulation in 2018, which held companies liable to large fines for uncontrolled sharing of data. The state of California, the epicenter of tech, followed suit with the California Consumer Privacy Act. Companies and platforms also responded. Safari introduced ITP, a privacy feature that uses machine learning to block third-party cookies. In the iOS 14.5, Apple introduced App Tracking Transparency, which is why you get asked now, do you want to allow tracking? Most third-party cookies are gone. You can enable private blockers, or you're almost always asked and can say no. This was a knife through the heart of the external data brokerage industry. The days of mining disparate data sets to build individual profiles of your behavior were done. But something else changed too in the coming years. For all the faults of the previous system, one thing it did was function as a competitive market. A closeted gay priest, an Oracle, and Mark Zuckerberg were all trying to get their hands on your data to accomplish their goals. But once this black market closed, for the most part, the major players in technology were the only ones left standing with the resources to keep their tracking systems functioning. Google owns Google Search, obviously, but they also own Gmail and YouTube and Android. Facebook owns Instagram and WhatsApp. Amazon has monopolized e-commerce to the highest degree. Apple even owns your location. The largest players in tech responded by expanding their internal tracking operations, keeping everything in-house, but expanding the walls and locking them shut. Think about how often now, when you go to a new website, download a new app, whatever, you're asked, do you want to sign in with Google? Now, Google doesn't have to piece together who you are. They see exactly where you are. They are your identity as you browse the web. In 2022, researchers from the United Kingdom ran a study on iPhones, in which they observed the amount of activity tracking before and after the iOS 14.5 update.
We observed that network requests, which included various unique user identifiers and other personal